Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Devil's Den Hockey. Now, I know this is a little bit of a different video. I figured it is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful day out. Sun is shining, no clouds in the sky, nothing. So I figured we'd do things a little bit differently, and we are doing our Devil's Den video outside for the day. I apologize for not being able to get that video up last night. However, unfortunately, we continue to have technical issues with some of our recording equipment, so it is what it is. So we're starting anew this morning. Like I said, it's a beautiful day. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk Devils hockey. So the last few games Devils have played have, I'm not gonna lie, not left the greatest impression in my mind. They had a couple of really good games against the Wild. I thought both back-to-back games against the Wild, I thought the Devils played absolutely phenomenally. They came out, they busted their ass, and we're continuing to see the resurgence of Timo Meier. We're continuing to see the resurgence of Jesper Bratt. And when I say resurgence, they've been good for most of the year, especially guys like Hischier and Bratt. But seeing Meier step into a new role where he's coming out on fire, and again, I know that we're having, the Timo March madness that we always get, regardless of what team he's on, what year it is. Timo, for some reason, constantly comes out in March like a cannonball. And can you imagine if we had gotten Timo Meier the way he plays in March the entirety of the year? Could you imagine how good Meier would have been? This guy would have had like 40 goals this season. Like, it's actually crazy how good Meier could be if he could just be consistent throughout the entire year. But nonetheless, they played absolutely phenomenally against on the Minnesota Wild. And Marchand coming back from injury and playing Vezina level hockey, the guy was on fire for like at least a couple of games. And then you have the games against Pittsburgh that make me go, maybe we're not as consistent as I hoped and thought we would be. And it's not as if the Devils play necessarily badly, though there was a couple of games there after the Minnesota game where I thought, holy shit, what is going on with the Devils right now? It's so weird because we know how good the Devils are and we know how good the Devils can be. But then you have games like the games against Pittsburgh where they just get their shit kicked in constantly. And they've played 2 games against Pittsburgh, right? Near the end of their season, the last 10 or 15 games. They've played Pittsburgh twice, and both times they've had their shit kicked in. And it's so weird how they can go up against the top teams in the league, like Florida, like Minnesota, like Colorado, and all of these other teams that are like really high up in the standings, and they just get their shit kicked in. Or they play against Carolina and play really well, and they play against teams like Pittsburgh, and they can't get it up for these weaker teams. And pardon me for the weird analogy there, but it's true. It seems like the Devils can get it up for the best teams in the league, but they can't get it up for these little guys. They can't get it up for the teams that have no hope of making the playoffs. It just is what it is. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong with them. It's like Keith goes into the locker room and Hischier goes into the locker room and fires up the boys before all of these big games, and then he just decides, we should be able to take the little guys, right? Not a friggin' chance. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It does kind of give me pause for how we go into the playoffs, because if we're able to get it up, if we're able to play really well against these top teams, it does make me wonder about how we're going to be when we go up against the Hurricanes in the first round. It is interesting. Now, obviously, we have a couple of different variables when we're talking about Carolina versus the Devils, right? The Devils are playing injured. The Devils are playing without arguably their best or second best player in Jack Hughes. The Devils are going into this without Jonas Siegenthaler, arguably one of our best defensemen all year round. Though Luke Hughes is really, especially the last 15 to 20 games of the season, Luke has put on a clinic on what it means to be an elite all-star defenseman in the NHL. And it's crazy to me that we watch Luke compete and you watch Timo compete at the end of the year and you're like, where has this been? Where has this holier than thou performance been all year? And it's not that they've been bad. They haven't been bad. But again, looking at how we're going to be playing against Carolina, it'll be interesting to see which kind of guys we're going to be getting. Are we going to be getting Timo Meier with his no goals in like 12 games? Or are we going to be getting the Timo Meier that scores every single game for like 13 straight? Are we going to be getting the kind of defensive defenseman from Luke Hughes? Or are we going to be getting the offensive bombshell and the two sides of the puck, the offense and the defense coming together to make that elite defenseman? I know that a lot of people have been talking about whether or not the Devils make it out of the first round. I'm torn for basically two reasons. I'm torn for two reasons. I think that Carolina is a more mature and balanced team. I think their depth is something that's really interesting, and they seem to be a more complete put together team, where with the Devils it feels like sometimes we're going into games patching ourselves up here and there, filling in holes where we need to, whereas it feels like with Carolina it just feels like they're a more complete put together team, and there's a little bit more maturity there. So I wonder if that's going to play a role. The other thing that's going to play a role is goaltending. I think that Markstrom and Allen have played They've been everything we've wanted them to be. They've been everything we've wanted them to be and more this year. I would go so far as to say that Markstrom and Allen are arguably the one of the best goaltending tandems in the NHL. I think there's a real conversation to be had about whether or not they end up winning the Jennings Trophy this year as the best goaltending tandem with the lowest goals against average this year. I think that Stolarz and Wall for the Leafs have also been that, but Carolina feels like they either get Vezina goaltending or they get Swiss cheese. So I feel like Carolina probably has a more mature and well-rounded team, but it feels like we probably have the edge on them goaltending-wise. Now, another thing that comes into mind when we're talking about Carolina versus the Devils is the possible return of Dougie Hamilton. I don't know how I feel about Hamilton returning. I kind of don't want to see him come back. I'd rather Hamilton get fully healthy and then come back next year ready to kick ass than bring him back too early and then he gets injured again. But this time it's a more severe injury and he's basically like we never get prime Hamilton back again. Right? And he is getting older. He is in his early 30s. So it is possible that he sustained some sort of big injury and then we get screwed with basically a guy that we're paying millions of dollars to. Big contract, big money. And we never get back to where Hamilton is 100% if we push him back. Obviously, the team would be better if we have Hamilton. The team would be better as a whole if Dougie Hamilton is on the ice for the first round against the Hurricanes. My concern is if we're going to put Hamilton on the ice for the playoff series against the Carolina Hurricanes, then the Devils better have one hell of a playoff run and they get to like the Eastern Conference Final at the minimum. Because if you're gonna risk Dougie Hamilton's health and you're gonna risk the wholeness of the team with possibly never getting back prime Dougie Hamilton because he comes back not completely healthy, and then he gets injured even more, or he comes back at like 70% or even 60 or 50%, and then by the end of the series he's at like 10%. Now he'll have the whole offseason, but like, do we really want to risk arguably our star defenseman, arguably besides Luke Hughes and Siegenthaler, the best defenseman on this team by far? Do we really want to risk the case where Hamilton goes out permanently? It's sort of like a risk. What do you call it? It's a pro-con list. I generally think that the cons outweigh the pros. We also know how brutal playoff hockey can be, just on a physical level. And again, if Hamilton comes back and he's not fully healthy, and you put him in that playoff hockey environment where you've got guys that are like breaking bones but are still playing, I just don't want to put Hamilton in that position where suddenly we're risking one of the best defensemen we have on a, let's be honest, not even a certainty that we're going to get past Carolina. And I hope that we do. I hope that we do get past Carolina. I just don't know if I'm willing to risk Hamilton's health now and in the future just so that we can say we have Hamilton on the roster. You know what I mean? Like, it feels weird. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was Nico's, Hischier's Selke chances. So I've been going over this back and forth with some people I know who know puck much better than I have been watching longer than I have, that remember the glory days back in the 80s and the 90s and things like that. And I think that the Selke race is basically a two-man race. I think genuinely the two guys I think that have the best chances of winning the Selke this year is Nico Hischier and, shockingly, Anthony Cirelli from the Lightning. I know that it's probably going to go to, Barkov or Reinhart for Florida, because they have the name recognition. They're on the big team. They're on a team that's going to go further into the playoffs. They have a big impact on their team. But did you guys know that, like, Barkov, who everyone says is going to win the Selke, you know that he's in the negatives for his plus-minus? To me, that's wild. There's only two guys, I think, that have a better plus-minus than Nico Hischier as a forward in terms of, like, two-way forwards. And one of these guys isn't even a true two-way forward. It's Cirelli and it's Marner. And Marner's never winning the Selke. He's just not. He's on the Leafs, okay? And as much as people hate to admit this, the awards do kind of get biased depending on what team you're on. If you put Nico Hischier on the Florida Panthers, this man would be cleaning up Selke trophies like friggin' crazy. But Hischier is arguably one of the best, if not in the top three, best two-way forwards in the league. This guy can play as well defensively as he can offensively, okay? And the pure disrespect that I see thrown at Hischier's name year in and year out, because he's not getting like 45 to 50 goals every single season. He's not this flashy guy. He's just a guy that puts his head down, puts his nose down, grinds every single day, every single game, and comes out and has such a huge impact on not only the game that the Devils play, but also on the Devils, on each other. You can talk to all sorts of guys on the team, and they'll tell you how big of an impact Hischier plays, what a great leader that he is. And when it comes to who should or who should not get the Selke, it should be coming down to the guy that is as good defensively as he is offensively. Hischier's got like a plus 13, plus 15 year, and this is including where half the year the Devils played from January to like March, April, where they shit the bed, and this guy's still coming out with a plus 15. Now, Anthony Cirelli for the Lightning, he's got like a plus 23, plus 25. The guy is huge, and Tampa has been a threat all year round. It's not like they're going anywhere, right? But you compare this to guys like Alexander Barkov, who is probably going to win the Selke, arguably, right? The guy is a -1 plus minus. And again, when we're looking at the best defensive forward, we're not looking at goals, we're not looking at assists, we're not looking at points, we're looking at who is defensively responsible. If your plus minus, and this is just my opinion, you guys are more than welcome to disagree with me, if your plus minus is in the negatives, I don't know how you look at that situation and go, yeah, that guy is responsibly defensive. Now, I understand that not every single goal that goes in that affects your plus minus is necessarily your fault. But if you're constantly in the negatives, it does kind of give you the feeling that, hey, maybe this guy isn't that great defensively. Maybe he is just all offense and no defense. And he sure exemplifies, in my personal opinion, what it means to play both sides of the ice, what it means to be a 200-foot player. The idea that this guy is as good defensively as he is offensively, and is as good in his own end as he is on the other side when he's trying to put the puck in the net. Hischier Hischier and Brett have got to be arguably one of the most criminally underrated players in the NHL. There's even conversations about him being a dark horse for the Hart Trophy this year. Like, he's not going to win the Hart Trophy. He's just not going to be. But holy shit, the fact that he's on the Devils, and the fact that there's only been one other Devil in the history of the NHL to ever win the Hart Trophy, and that's Taylor Hall. The fact that Hischier is being entered into that conversation, I think, speaks to how impactful he is for the Devils. And sometimes it feels like, because he's not the flashy player, because he's not the goal scorer, because he's not the he's not getting 100 points a season, it feels like he does not get the credit he deserves. And I would say the same thing for Brad. Because he's not the flashy goal scorer, because of the fact that he'll have called him, the assist merchant this year, with almost having like 70 assists in a single season, right? It feels like because they don't play for some of these big markets, they don't get the respect that they deserve. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I know we've got the Islanders today at 1 o'clock. Unfortunately, I'm going to be at work at that point, so I'm not going to be able to watch the game. I'll probably watch it tonight once I get home. I'll probably rewatch it once the game's actually over. But yeah, I know it's been like 2.5 weeks since I last made a video, so I wanted to put out something before the playoffs started. We will definitely be covering every single game for the playoffs, one way or another, even if it's the next day. But yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.